Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started here. Good morning, everybody. My name is Cameron McClurg, and here with Millie Babbage today, presenting Children's Hospital Wisconsin Lessons Learned, 18 months since going live with PeopleSoft on OCI. We're very happy to be with you today. Hope you're all having a great conference week, learning a lot about PeopleSoft. And today we're going to talk a little bit about OCI and one of our customers' experiences on moving from on-prem to OCI. All right. I'm going to go a little bit in reverse. I'll introduce myself, and I'll pass it back to Millie to introduce herself. We're going to tag team on this presentation today. As I mentioned, my name is Cameron McClurg. I see my slide hasn't been updated. I forgot to update this. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, but I have moved recently to Southern California. So I'm in Southern California. I've been here for the last couple of months, and that's where my new residence is. I have been doing PeopleSoft work for many years, over 20. And most of that time was as a full-time employee at several organizations, doing all of the detail business analysis and design and build out and testing and support. And eventually I was a director at an organization in Seattle for several years, overseeing all the financial systems. And that's when SpearMC was my consulting partner doing PeopleSoft upgrade and international expansion. And I said to them, I said, hey, why don't I just join you guys and do what I do internally with organizations where I lead teams and put together support plans and production support and rolling out new functionality and all that stuff. Why don't I just do that with you guys for lots of customers? And so I hopped the fence and came over to the consulting world about 3.5 years ago. And now I have a bunch of different clients that we're doing same types of work for, managed service, all that kind of stuff. I'll get into that here in a second. But that's kind of my world. Millie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Cameron. Hi, everyone. My name is Millie Babbage. I've been with SpearMC for about 14 years now, and obviously focused on PeopleSoft. But my entire career, I have about the same amount of experience in the PeopleSoft area as Cameron, about 20 plus years. I don't want to say anything higher because I'll just date myself. Prior to SpearMC, I worked at KPMG, and I also, worked for HSBC Bank. I ran their IT department, which was also a very heavy PeopleSoft shop. So I kind of have the consulting side and the client side, just like Cameron does. My involvement here for Children's Hospital, I was actually the project manager out at Children's. So I'll kind of give you a little Cameron will focus on the OCI part, and I'll kind of give you more details on the project itself that we did at Children's Hospital. All right?
All right, great. And Millie, can you just confirm that you can see my screen, the proper PowerPoint slide, right?
That's correct. You're presenters.
Good deal, because I've got two screens going, making sure you can see the right one. All right. A little bit about SpearMC. So we were a platinum partner. Well, we still had that program. That's been transitioned a little bit to the areas of specialization that we have with an expertise, they call it, with Oracle. But we've been doing PeopleSoft pretty much from the beginning. We that started as an organization who was sort of doing PeopleSoft training and really started to understand that our customers who are PeopleSoft customers need a holistic view of PeopleSoft. So whether that is functional implementations, new modules, new pillars, that sort of thing, or if it's a situation of services, managed services, functional support, technical support, all of that type of stuff. We do all of that support, but also then expand into all these other areas. So for example, hosting, we'll talk about that a little bit today, hosting on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. If you're not on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, we can still work with you, of course, but we are a partner of Oracle, and we are believe that PeopleSoft works best on OCI, which I'm going to tell you about a little bit later. Getting involved in emerging technology, we're really excited about chatbots, Kibana, Oracle guided learning. We have sessions this week on those topics. I'll talk about that in a second as well. We still do our training, and then we're also involved in some other non-PeopleSoft stuff. But PeopleSoft is really our core, and that's where we like to stay because that's what we know. And we've done PeopleSoft forever. When other organizations and competitors of ours, other partners in the consulting world, decided to start saying, yeah, well, we're not going to do PeopleSoft anymore. We're going to focus on cloud SaaS applications. We said, you know what? We believe that our customers still find value in PeopleSoft. We're going to double down. We're going to redouble our efforts in providing comprehensive services to our PeopleSoft customers. And that's where we've been. And frankly, it's paid off because we see it. We predicted people would want to continue to find value with PeopleSoft. And we want to, come around that with additional services to provide value, whether it's Oracle Cloud Infrastructure or managed services. But the root and the source of this is still PeopleSoft value in a very mature application that does really everything people want to do from finance and HCM and campus perspective. Our managed services really are focused on a couple of different areas. Really, I would start on the right side here, which is the primary use of our managed service, which is technical support and functional support. But we do also offer infrastructure hosting, or in like this presentation today, we're going to talk about is lift and shift services to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or I should say cloud infrastructure in general. We also offer other types of services like testing as a service, where we are providing automated testing through PeopleSoft Test Framework and provide ongoing support. All of this is designed to help you as organizations get and then stay current with your application. Our services are sort of comprehensive focus on that sort of concept. We are coast to coast. I won't talk too much about this because nobody frankly cares where you live anymore, and most organizations don't. And we certainly are a virtual organization with consultants all across the country. So the key is that we work in your time zone. That's the key. We are pleased to say, and this I'll promise is the last one about us, but we are very happy and very pleased that this year we were recognized by Gartner in their market guide for Oracle Professional Services, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Services. So we're now represented in Gartner. We still have our specializations, of course, with PeopleSoft and Oracle, and in areas of PeopleSoft, Oracle Cloud Platform, we have a couple other specializations. But again, this is just a recognition of years of investing in PeopleSoft, and specifically PeopleSoft on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So very happy to be recognized. All right. Enough about us. These are the sessions that we've got, and I lied because I said enough about us, and here's our sessions that we're doing this week. I apologize. But anyway, we are very happy to have a lot of sessions. Again, it recognizes our thought leadership here in the PeopleSoft space. But I'll point out a couple. I don't know if you saw any of our sessions yesterday, but going forward, I'll just point out that you come here to hear about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and specifically Children's Hospital experience with OCI. But I will point out a couple more. We've got 2 sessions on chatbots, which is sort of highlighting our emerging technologies. We did one in Kibana yesterday. You can check that out on the replay. But also there's one other that's really cool that I want to point out. I'm doing the session tonight at 5 o'clock Eastern. It's about Oracle guided learning. It's a brand new thing. It's going to be a replacement for, it is a replacement for UPK. And it provides an overlay of training for your PeopleSoft environment that's very easy to use. And come check it out. If you can't check it out, hear the replay. It's very exciting. And that's tonight. All right, enough about all that. You guys came here to hear about Children's, so let's get on with it. Children's is a private independent not-for-profit healthcare system located in Wisconsin, dedicated solely to the health and well-being of children. It is affiliated with a medical college, which we see that a lot with our healthcare customers, that there is often a educational wing or association. And that's important because we are one of the leaders in grants management in PeopleSoft. And so grants often use on the education side or the college side, even though the primary customer might be healthcare. So we've done a lot of work with that. The children specifically has that as well. They're one of the nation's top pediatric facilities and serve families from all 50 states. The Research Institute represents the most powerful concentration of pediatric research in the region, more than 1,000 clinical trials and 25 million in external funding. It's just a fantastic organization. If anybody has ever, if you have kids, if you had to go to a children's hospital in your neck of the woods, which I had to several times with my kids, this children's hospitals, the people at children's hospitals are really the best of us, and I really truly believe that. All you gotta do is take your kid to a children's hospital, and you really come to appreciate the people that work there. And we were very, very happy to be able to work with these guys and help them out. So their footprint, and this is a current footprint. This is not the footprint that they had when they first went on to OCI. The current footprint now, again, later, after their original lift and shift, was they're now on tools 858 both, and still image 33 for HCM and 38 for financials. They got 6,000 employees, and production database is about 500 gigabytes, and they had about 9 non-prod environments. So we just throw this out there just to kind of give you an idea of, hey, what are other similar organizations? You know, how do we compare to that? Is this going to be right for us? I will tell you that this is, I would say, probably fairly average in terms of the size, kind of a not real small, not real big, kind of right in the middle. It's fairly average, but we do have much larger organizations and we have much smaller organizations, and one I'm going to highlight at the very end of this presentation. So it really, the great thing about OCI, the scalability, the elasticity of OCI really works for any size organization. But we just often just throw out this just to sort of say, here's what this organization is doing. All right, PeopleSoft.
Cameron, if you could step back to that slide. Just wanted, because you had mentioned, they're currently running 858, but just a refresher. So when they did the lift and shift to OCI on the HCM side, they were running 855 with image 21. And since then, obviously, they did their upgrade on OCI, which was very painless. So they, definitely appreciated that. And on the financial side, they were on 856, image 26, when they did the lift and shift. So and since then, also, as you can see, they've done the financials upgrade as well. And out of the 6,000 employees, which obviously are all on self-service, they have about 50 core application users. So it just kind of gives everybody a little perspective of the size of their shop. And
Millie, I realized with the slide numbers here, I was supposed to hand it off to you at 8, so I apologize, but let me just use that to say, Millie was on the ground with these guys from the beginning. My role with these guys was to kind of start the process, get some initial training going, and then step away. So I kind of stepped away and then kind of stepped back in to understand the lessons learned. But Millie has a lot of experience with the actual project itself, and so that's why she was supposed to take over at 8, and I just flew right past that. So Millie, I'm sorry about that. But why don't you go ahead and take over, and you got the next few slides.
Oh, no problem. You were on the roll. I didn't want to stop you. No problem. Yeah, well, you're the OCI expert, right? So, all right. So we could go on to the next slide. We're going to talk about some of the challenges that led to the decision to move on OCI. Then we'll talk about the solution, and then Cameron. That's when Cameron's going to dig more into the details of their approach and the OCI environment and how all of that is set up and things like that. So go ahead. Yeah. So challenges presented. Basically, Children's has not invested a lot of resources over the years, to keep their infrastructure current. They really, they focused a lot of their time and energy on keeping current with their PeopleSoft tools and applications. So that was fairly always, being upgraded on a routine basis, but the infrastructure, was not. And basically, they finally, hit a brick wall when they realized that, their hardware and software is no longer actively supported by the vendors. So that became a big concern. So they recognized that they needed to do something actually fairly quickly. They couldn't afford to get into a multi-year project. So, let's talk about end-of-life technology. Basically, possesses, the following risks around security, compliance, and then just overall, increased support costs. Talk to any auditor, and they will tell you that running end-of-life software represents not only, significant risk to your security, but also likely, constitutes a compliance violation under, various regulatory standards, as you could imagine. And back to the, just increasing operating costs year over year, the costs would just get, higher and higher. But, based on their business case, moving to OCI was definitely the most logical solution. So here are some of the details around the solution. Children basically upgraded their on-prem infrastructure, to the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, and also as I guess processing power and speed was very important to them as well. So they actually implemented and utilized a Fast Connect internet network alternative instead of using the public internet. So that was also a pretty big deal for them. And OCI just basically also allowed children to have a more effective disaster recovery solution in place, which is something that they didn't really did a good job around in the past, which is also another concern. So Cameron, I'll bounce it back to you as far as just the approach and what they did, and talk through some of the OCI details.
Sounds good. And while Millie mentioned that they had invested a lot of time in keeping their infrastructure up to date, they did invest in the project itself. They saw this as their opportunity to kind of re-baseline their approach to how they're looking at the infrastructure needs to support their applications, right? So instead of a turnkey service that they said, we're kind of going down this path, we're going to start, laying off people or changing the dynamics of how we support these applications. They said, no, we've got the people, we trust the people, which we actually see that quite a lot. We trust these people. We need them to kind of be the ones to help us move towards OCI. We need outside support to facilitate and to empower those people. And that's something that we're very comfortable with. We come alongside this group of people and say, hey, we're here to empower you. And so really the way we did that is we start with training. We do that really with, even if it's has nothing to do with OCI, maybe it's just an implementation of a new module. We say the best way to do this, not a turnkey where you're 100% reliant on us, but rather we are here to partner with you. And the first thing we're doing is we're going to empower you to understand this application, or understand this module, understand Oracle Cloud infrastructure, so that you make really great decisions about how you want to bring your application forward. So that's what we did here. We started with a week of training. I think I have another slide on kind of what we covered there, but that was kind of my area to kind of say, okay, how do we do this? How do we empower these people? And so we put together some training that we had already. We built some new custom training for them to really tailor it to what they specifically were going to do and what the areas they were going to focus on. They utilized a lift and shift methodology that our technical architect sort of designed and architected for them. This was really again, starting with the end in mind, and the end meaning what they wanted in terms of their final infrastructure, final architecture, but also what they wanted for the cutover, right? So they wanted to have a minimal cutover which required some creative ways of saying, okay, how do we do this to minimize the amount of time and impact to bring the system offline and bring it up onto the cloud infrastructure. All these activities were, were based on, some methodology we had and helped them really move at a very fast pace. The other piece that's really important, we have a few slides on this, is the PeopleSoft test framework. We are experts in PeopleSoft test framework and really help them see the role that automated testing could play in the rapid movement towards cloud infrastructure. And really, this is something we believe in across the board, whether it's move to OCI or just a new implementation. We really truly believe in PPTF scripts to create regression tests and to make sure that all of the things are still functioning the way they do. We believe in it so much that we've built out a whole library of gold, we call them gold test scripts, that are ready to go, plug and play into your environment. You swap out the variables, meaning business units, departments, etc., but the scripts are already ready to go. They they're designed to work out of the box for you. If there's failures in those scripts, it often means that you've got a customization that is conflicting with delivered functionality, and that's a good thing to find that, right? So we really believe in these PTF scripts. I could talk all day about PTF, but it was a fundamental pillar in our implementation approach. So we're going to use this to mitigate the risk of defects found after the fact or cutover. Our entire program here around cloud moving to OCI, we call it Cloud Shift. It really is designed to be comprehensive and yet flexible. And so with Children's Hospital of Wisconsin, they didn't need hosting. They didn't want all these different services. They simply wanted some partnership, some thought leadership in terms of how to design it. And so we said, yeah, that's fine. Let's come alongside and help you. Our program we help everybody with is really designed that way, to say, where are you at? Where do you want to go? And how can we help you? You're the expert in your application. We bring expertise around Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. How do we help you, meet your end state goals here? Obviously, one of the big things about OCI is PeopleSoft Cloud Manager, which you can see on the left side, about what that does for you. And I actually have a few slides. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end where I'm going to talk specifically around what PeopleSoft and OCI looks like. So hopefully we'll have some time at the end to talk more about that. This is where we focused on our training. It was a 1 week of training. I kicked off at the very beginning doing initial Cloud Infrastructure 101 and specifically OCI and specifically PeopleSoft and OCI. So I kicked off. We had a couple other trainers, including the technical architect that worked with them then for the duration of the project, go through what does it look like to deploy PeopleSoft on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Our technical architect was one of the first ones to actually architect PeopleSoft on OCI, when at the time it wasn't even called OCI, it was called the Oracle Cloud. And it was really Gen 1. And unfortunately, that was a painful project because the Oracle Cloud at that time, this would have been now 5 or 6 years ago, wasn't what it is now, right? It's not, and that was painful. So, but he understood a lot from that background and how OCI has developed over the years, and was able to do that. So he was able to do some of that training, train them on Cloud Manager, the use of Cloud Manager. And then how PUM works on OCI works basically the same, although there's some new features that I'll hopefully be able to talk about. And then, of course, as you talk about moving to cloud, there is obviously a very important conversation to be had about security and how that looks. A lot of people don't want to move to cloud because of security. I would actually argue you should move to cloud because of security. But that is a very important part of the conversation as well. Kind of looking next couple slides are very technical, so bear with me if you're not a technical person. I'll try to explain it in a functional way. But here's their side on the left side here, you can see was the source, what they had. And then on the right, you can see the target. The key here is that they had two different versions of the database on their source and on their on-prem between their financials and HCM. They wanted to bring that in line with each other at the target on the OCI side. So they brought the HCM side up to 12.2, which was the same as they had on the financials. That change from 12.1, 12.2 created a little bit of movement, a little bit of variability in the movement over into OCI. It would have gone faster if they didn't do that. However, there was significant value in doing that to bring them to the same, the two databases into alignment. One of the things they chose to do was not move people tools or really other aspects of the PeopleSoft footprint other than movement towards Linux as well. But they decided to move 856 and 855 straight over. They did not bring the people tools in line the way they did with the database. So this was important for them. And frankly, it's one of the ways we recommend is don't do a lot of changing on the way to the cloud. As any implementation happens, we often say, try to keep things similar. You're trying to change one thing if that one thing is pretty big, which is where PeopleSoft sits. Then you want to minimize the amount of changes around that, because if something goes wrong, you want to be able to isolate that issue and fix it very quickly. And so we oftentimes say, whatever you're at with PeopleTools, let's move you over. And then once you're there, we can facilitate. It's very easy to now spin up additional servers and then get you upgraded on OCI. It's just going to be fundamentally easier and faster. iChart here, I get it. This is the architecture. For any of you that are technically savvy, you can look at this and probably understand what you're looking at. For those of you that are functional, I'll simply say this, that you've got on the left side, you've got the on-prem data center, your on-prem where people sit, although I should say people used to sit, but people still connected into your on-prem network. And then you've got this cloud network, which is basically just data centers that are not at your premises, not at your location. But there's this connection basically that's happening from your on-prem data center into these cloud data centers. And you can see at the top the one that's in Ashburn, and that's their, actually doesn't label it Ashburn, but that's Virginia. That's their primary tenancy, primary data center, but they had a disaster recovery footprint in the Phoenix region, and they had synchronization and replication using RAC and rsync, moving all of the data, or I should say replicating all the data from the Ashburn region down to the Phoenix region. And by doing that, they had this whole disaster recovery model where they said, you know what, if anything goes down with our connection to Ashburn or with Ashburn itself, we don't skip a beat. Everything's still going in Phoenix. We just cut over Phoenix. People continue to do their work. And so this is I would say this is how do I say this? Well, I'll say it. This is the Cadillac of disaster recovery, okay? Now, not every organization does this. This costs money, okay, to do this, to actually have this full synchronization process, your entire footprint in a secondary region. Everything you see here on the upper portion of the footprint, the costs basically are replicated in the bottom portion, okay? So what that means is that oftentimes you're not replicating your non-prod environments usually, but this is usually about an 80%, 90% increase in your costs when you go with an approach like this. But the flip side is that when we start talking to you, have a very specific disaster recovery conversation about what's your recovery point, what's your recovery time objective, right? RPO, RTO, it's a disaster recovery concept. You say, oh, well, we've got a 1 hour time frame where we have to be back up within 1 hour. Okay, then we need to talk about having a secondary region with a full disaster recovery footprint and a synchronization process. Okay, and that's something that we can do. Again, we partner with you and design something to work with you. A lot of our other organizations say, you know what, we're not going to take the cost of the secondary region. We'll do backups. We'll do backups to the secondary region, but we're okay if, and we sort of make this risk, assessment and say, you know what, we believe that it's very unlikely for the Oracle data center to go down. Therefore, we're okay with a backup process. In my history, Oracle data centers haven't gone down. So you could say there's a very high likelihood or extreme unlikely situation of the data center to go down. So anyway, that's enough to talk about the architecture. PeopleSoft really, and for them specifically, works as a application that sits on infrastructure. So infrastructure as a service, if you've heard that term. It leverages specific functionalities that exist on the platform. And one of the things you're going to see in the future is probably not so much conversation about infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. There's really, once you go to OCI, you simply are on OCI and you simply flip a switch, you're using other services. For example, load balancing. You don't have to just get this infrastructure and then you've got to go then separately license a load balancer from a load balancing company and then install it or implement it on your infrastructure. It's simply a service that you just turn on OCI and you all of a sudden using it. Another example is running Linux databases, or sorry, Linux servers. Again, you can just turn that on and just use it. There's several other platform services, which I'll talk about if we have time at the very end. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it back to Millie to talk about the actual project timeline and some other parts about a PTF.
All right, great. Thanks, Cameron. Another eye chart here. But basically, the overall time frame was, projected for about 3.5 months. I mean, they did have HCM and financials, and we had approximately 18 environments, to move over into the cloud. But we did get delayed about 2 additional months. For the following reasons. Number one, the dependency on the third party to set up the Fast Connect channel, which was, I mentioned earlier, that was pretty critical. Unfortunately, the team didn't start early enough engaging the third party, so that caused a little bit of delays. And then also, just basically trying to coordinate an outage, which, between the finance and the business teams. And we did maintain the outage down, to the weekend, and we were able to do all environments, on the weekend and so forth. But it still involved a great amount of coordination between the two teams. One of the things about their approach in the project was that business was definitely requesting some additional mock cutovers for testing purposes. So we kind of threw a couple extra mock cutovers in there, and basically with the use of PTF test scripts, we were able to facilitate. So if you want to kind of go to the next slide, Cameron, we were able through PTF, leveraging that tool, we were able to quickly turn around the testing since we had to move the 2 production and 18 non-prod environments and 2 production environments. So the rapid regression testing was definitely key. So using PTF definitely helped out in that regard. We converted manual testing into a lot of the manual testing that they've done in the past, because I mentioned also that they were fairly good about doing application upgrades and tools upgrades and so forth. So, but they did a lot of manual testing back then. But since then, we've automated all those test scripts, and we're able just to run them, on all the environments when the shifts happen. So that kind of definitely facilitated the testing. So if you go to the next slide, why use test automation just in general? I mean, the strategic decision to utilize PTF, because they didn't really use the tool in the past, was really mostly to support the rapid migration of OCI, right? That really definitely helped things along, and it was just a cost. But that was for the OCI efforts. But obviously, long term, Children's actually did sign up for our testing as service offering as well, because once again, using the PTF tool is a very cost-effective, way to implement selective adoption, so that this way you could, I believe their upgrade cycles were about, 1 year they would do, or 1 year, year and a half, they would do financials. Then the next year and a half, they would HCM. So now, obviously, with the PTF framework, they were able to accelerate that upgrade process. And then on the next slide, it kind of, it gives you a little overview of when to use PTF. Children can leverage PTF for most of their test needs. The only thing, obviously, that PTF is generally not a good tool for is obviously interface testing. When you're dealing with external files and everything, so that requires a little more coordination and manual effort that PTF can not necessarily help with. And obviously, performance testing. That's something that you would generally do with another tool. But any other testing, unit system, integration, and obviously UAT and regression, all of those are good candidates, test types to use PTF. And as far as the PTF tool, and just at a high level, how it works, we obviously, we have the tests, we have to validate and update test plans, prep the PTF environment, validate and update test scripts. And actually, Cameron mentioned earlier on in the session that we were able, or Children's was able to leverage a lot of the SPEAR-MC existing test libraries that we have in place. So we kind of started with a library and then did the retrofitting that is more in line with how Children's uses the environment. So that was definitely an accelerator as well, and we didn't have to spend so much time in developing the scripts from scratch. But this is kind of the overall cycle as far as around the testing. So very, very heavily use of PTF during this process. All right, so next slide, we talk about what we've learned. Here are kind of the good and the not so good things we learned. I think one of the good things, our success was definitely linked to results of our rigorous cutover planning. So that definitely it helped out a lot. And I mentioned earlier that we did a lot of mock cutovers. So that kind of helped narrow down the windows of time as far as how long everything takes to process. And we were happy to report that our outage actually lasted only 36 hours to move all those environments over, which I think was just awesome in how quickly they were able to do that and such. The team, they did a great job, great teamwork. We had obviously people from Oracle help, and the children's staff, and then all the SPEAR-MC resources that helped in the effort. So that was key as well to the success of the project. Oracle and Children's did spin their wheels a little bit on the sizing agreements. As far as so that caused a little bit of rework. So definitely. And that's one of the services we offer as well, is to help you guys, size the environment and things like that. So that kind of took us a little bit a setback there, but eventually, they were able to work things out. Should have, I mentioned that PTF is really not a good performance tool, but we should have probably invested up front, or the client invested up front in a more automated performance testing tool. Instead, we kind of did the performance a little more manually. So that took a little more time than expected. So definitely any kind of automated testing tools is always a key in these situations. And then lastly, just dependency on the third party. Was severely underestimated on how long it was going to take them to make the connection. So that's something for everybody on the phone, that if you're going to be going into another a non-public internet connection, another alternative, you definitely want to get that rolling up front and get those people engaged as soon as you can. So Cameron, I'll go ahead and turn it over. If you want any other lessons learned or kind of where we are.
So we got a couple more. So what we did is we did lesson learned at the time of the project, and then we had lessons learned 18 months later. So I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I want to just circle back to two things. Millie mentioned the idea of sizing, and that there was a little bit of churn in discussions with Oracle. At that time, which was now 18 months after the go live, but before that it was the project, right? So we're talking about almost 2 years ago that this conversations were happening, actually even before that with Oracle. At that time, there was an effort by Oracle to try to size what you're going to need and sell that to you. And this was a lesson learned for Oracle that said, you know what, people don't really know. They don't know how much cloud infrastructure they're going to need. We can estimate, but once you get onto OCI, you find out that you architect differently. You may not need what you thought you were going to need. And so people are using less than they originally committed to. And that was creating a bad situation for the customers where they were overcommitting, overpaying, and underutilizing. And so they've flipped that model now, and they've addressed those customers' complaints where you don't have to commit to a certain size of infrastructure. You have an estimate of what you think it's going to cost, but you're not committing to that. And that's a really key shift that allows you to go into it with confidence that you're not going to be overpaying on the move to cloud infrastructure. So that's a really important thing that it's been a lesson learned for Oracle on the Oracle side over the course of many years. The last thing I'll just talk real quickly, let me go back on this Fast Connect issue and just explain this just really briefly. And I know this, again, it's a very technical chart, but let me just explain really quickly. So on the left side here, you've got your customer premises equipment, your customer data center. There's a couple different ways to connect your data center to the cloud or cloud data center or cloud infrastructure. And there's a free option, which allows you to connect through a VPN connection from your, basically create a virtual private connection from your data center to the or cloud infrastructure. So it's completely private, secure. However, it's not, it doesn't have a robust, dedicated pipeline from this third-party internet service provider. That's what Fast Connect gives you. But Fast Connect essentially is the Oracle side of the equation. Oracle allows for a pipeline to come into their data center, but you need this intermediary, which is the MPLS, basically an ISP that says, okay, I will create this dedicated line and dedicated bandwidth between your data center and the Oracle Cloud Data Center. Oracle doesn't own that line. So you have to rely on a third party to provide that bandwidth, dedicated bandwidth, and it comes in actually now 3 flavors, 1 gigabit per second, 10, and they actually have 100 gigabit per second. So I would not throw that out there to say every organization needs a Fast Connect connection, because you're paying for Oracle, you're paying for that bandwidth on the Oracle side of the pipeline. You're also paying the internet service provider of creating that bandwidth, that dedicated bandwidth. So it's costly. So we would never say, hey, you automatically need this unless you are so big, your organization is so big, your application is so big, or your need for constantly moving data back and forth between the on-premise, the OCI is so great that you need this. We already know you need it. That's possible, but we often start, when we start out without that, we don't pay extra money. And so if you go towards that, you need that, then you do need to coordinate. It does require additional contract with that ISP and some additional work. And that's where Children's wasn't fully anticipating the timeline it would take to do all that work to create that pipeline. And so that's where kind of a lesson learned from their perspective. But I just want to explain that little, that piece, that intermediary piece between your data center and the Oracle Cloud data center. Okay, I'm going to come back over here to lessons learned. So now 18 months later, what are they saying about their lessons? Yeah, they had the initial lessons learned, but now their lessons learned, we're kind of distanced ourselves from the project itself. Said, okay, how is OCI itself? In general, thumbs up. Very satisfied with the move to OCI. When I said, okay, tell me why. big things, performance, right? Performance, very good. You just don't have performance. I see we have so many on-prem customers, and we're constantly talking about performance. We're talking about systems going down, users are complaining, and you have a lack of sort of expertise around what's causing that and how do we fix that, right, on-prem. I just don't hear that on OCI. Performance is not an issue. It's good, and that's no news is good news when it comes to performance, right, from your customers or from your end users. The biggest reason is really around the database management. I'm going to talk about that here in a second with OCI, but really the use of the database cloud service, which is what they did on OCI, is a service. You don't necessarily install the database on a server, you just leverage the database service. And by doing that, it's all sort of GUI driven. It's not like you don't need to go behind the scenes and do all the work that you used to do as a DBA. DBAs now have to transition to using a database cloud service. They still leverage all their expertise, but the tool set and how they manage it is a little bit different. It's much easier now. You don't really need to be a DBA with 20 years of experience. However, as I say, if you are a DBA with 20 years of experience and you learn how to use the database cloud services on OCI, you'll now be a rock star if you're not already. The upgrade from 12 to 19C, which is what they did in between these 18 months, they did that very easy to do. It has a pre-built upgrade process on OCI using the database cloud service, and it really is pretty streamlined and designed to just work. They changed their whole strategy around database management because of this, because of the database cloud service, and they were able to use more frequent updates. So really, the database management side is the biggest sort of win in their mind, although we talk to other customers and there's other wins, of course. So, with the infrastructure concerns, being eliminated, children can now focus on the application. What do we want to do with the application? Let's move towards more frequent updates. Let's move towards delivering new functionality and new features to our end users. IT organization really transitioned from, simply trying to keep the lights on and trying to keep up with this application, which they didn't fully understand how to leverage that or how to use it on-prem software, to saying, let's eliminate those infrastructure issues and simply, move this towards a value-add application, a value-add provider of services to our constituents within our business. And IT really transitioned themselves into that state. So last few slides, I'm going to talk through a case study with another customer of ours, just really briefly, and then I'll talk a little bit about PeopleSoft and OCI, and I'll try to go quickly. If you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat window, Millie, if you can kind of check out the chat window. In fact, I see there's one item here. Let me just check real quick. Okay, that's just the original one. Okay. First Financial Northwest Bank, another customer of ours. These guys, instead of what Children's wanted, which is they wanted to partner with their IT organization and just really empower them, First Financial didn't have an IT organization who wanted to support PeopleSoft. This was a net new customer to PeopleSoft, and they were coming off of a legacy financial software as a service solution. And performance was bad on that solution. The security was not good, and they had ineffective reporting. The application didn't work for them. They had no interest in on-prem servers, and they had no PeopleSoft expertise, but they knew about PeopleSoft. They saw it. They said, you know what, this is a robust application. If we put this on cloud infrastructure and leverage a service provider to do things like system administration and support, then we can really do it in a very lightweight model and just use the application versus being an administrator of the application. So that's what they wanted. That was the challenge. And due to the fact that we put this on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, we were able to stand up PeopleSoft, go live within 4 months. And that was a real win, going from, hey, here's a demo of the application to we're standing up the entire financials application in 4 months. We were able to do that because we were able to spin up infrastructure like that because it's on OCI. We start with demonstrations, training, requirements gathering. We mapped it to 100% delivered functionality. We really kept them very much on delivered functionality. Configurable, yes, configuration, but we kept them right on those delivered functionality. We did use what I call configurable enhancements, meaning we use things like page and field configurator to modify the application, but was still staying within a true delivered state. We did create a disaster recovery situation for these guys, although they didn't have as robust a situation or footprint as Children's, but First Financial did have a whole DR strategy, connected networks, and the most important thing for me as I was the project manager of this project was an uneventful go live, which is exactly the types of go lives that I'd like to have. So results achieved, time-saving consolidated reporting. Most of this stuff comes from them, and it really relates to the application. Time-saving consolidated reporting, streamlined approval process, stringent internal controls, enhanced reporting, improved system performance scalability. You'll see that a lot of the stuff is really about the application and not about the maintenance of the application behind the scenes. It just works for them, it's secure, it's scalable, and we are able to offer them continuous patching and enhancements through the PeopleSoft Cloud Manager. They leverage us for managed services, which means that 100% of their user action through the application is leveraging, again, the delivered functionality. We support that. We built that for them. We said, hey, let's build this for them. We have SLA-driven system administration and proactive patching and maintenance. So again, they say, hey, this application is offline, this non-product application offline, we bring it back up for them. We have SLAs, service level agreements with them on all that stuff. Same thing with functional support, pushing best practices, configurable enhancements, the whole thing. We do partner with their IT help desk, and the one thing that they do, there's only one thing that their IT help desk does, and that is they go and they unlock users and will create new users when they have new people. They don't understand how to set up security. We do that for them. We do all that support. So really, First Financial is a user of PeopleSoft without it being an administrator of PeopleSoft. And that's really the key here about what you can do with OCI. Leveraging OCI, leveraging a service provider like us is helping you simply use PeopleSoft and OCI. So let's use the last couple minutes here to talk through that real quick. So why does PeopleSoft run better on OCI? There's a couple of key things here. PeopleSoft Cloud Manager is really your application that sits alongside your other applications. It's like another pillar of PeopleSoft, and it has a live connection to the marketplace. It's getting all of your updates straight from PeopleSoft, straight from Oracle. So when a new PeopleTools patch comes out, it's automatically available to you without a download. There's no real need to go and find it, whatever. It's automatically right there for you, and it's ready to deploy right in. In fact, there's another policy I'll tell you where you can actually automatically apply PeopleTools patches without even needing to do manual intervention. Now, you wouldn't do that for production, but you can do it for non-prod. And so, again, one of those great features you can do because of PeopleSoft Cloud Manager, which, by the way, PeopleSoft Cloud Manager only runs on Oracle Cloud infrastructure. It does come with, obviously, the scalability, elasticity, security, has automated features, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. Lift and shift utility comes with it, and bringing your database from on-prem to the cloud. And as I mentioned, it has early release of all the tools. Actually, one more thing. So tools patching, automatic tools upgrades, meaning 8.5.9 was available as soon as it was delivered on OCI. It usually takes about 3 or 4 months to be available for on-prem customers. There's a technical reason for that, and there's a strategic reason for that for Oracle. But bottom line is you get access to PeopleTools faster than you do on-prem. So here you can see some of the features here that are available. So when you open up PeopleSoft Cloud Manager, it's another pillar. You have tiles just like you would in HCM or financials, and you can go in and do each of these things like setting up a template of your environment, saying I have this non-prod environment, I want to replicate it and create another non-prod environment. That's simply all GUI driven. You can go and say, take this one, create another one, very easy to do. One of the things I want to point out here is in the latest image, which is 12, which has now been out for quite a while here, but there's a governance feature. And this governance feature allows you to set up policies that allow you to automatically do these things you can see here. Apply updates, that's the PRPs, the patches, the tools patches. You can automatically apply those. You can do backups. You can scale down or scale up, and you can start and stop environments all from this GUI, which before you'd have to script this out on the back end, and now it's available through PeopleSoft Cloud Manager. So for example, let's say we want to have non-prod environments, because we have to pay for all these environments and pay for the infrastructure. We want to take down non-prod infrastructure on nights and weekends. It doesn't make sense that we keep these non-prod environments up all the time, 24/7, when people aren't using them. Now we're going to keep prod up 24/7, but why do we need to keep non-prod environments? So here you can see a very simple policy that's being created to take a couple of environments and say, we want to stop these environments on nights and weekends. You create a schedule for it, you create a policy, you apply the policy to, you can see a couple of environments here. And here's the result. You save money, okay? And here you can see this is the cost management on OCI. You can see the green bars. This is our server costs, and normally server costs are much larger. You can see this as a visualization, a real visualization of what we did with a couple of our environments, and showing that you actually are eliminating the cost of your servers during this nights and weekends. By doing that, if you take a look at that, you can really, it's really about 76% of your time if you limit it down to 40-hour work weeks. And so you can save tremendous cost, and it's all GUI driven. You just simply go in there, say you want to create this policy, you apply it, and it's on. Of course, you can bring the application back up for testing cycles, or somebody's going to work on the weekend, you can bring it back up. But by default, you're going to keep it down, and you're going to save yourself money. And again, you can do that through.
About 2 minutes, just so you know.
What's that?
You have about 2 minutes, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. I'll speak fast. Oracle Management Cloud, another feature that's on Oracle as a platform you get access to. You get these great dashboards. Here you can see a policy again that we're setting an alert to say, I want to manage the performance. I want to be notified when the application is slow, and I want to take action before it actually becomes a problem. This is a real life case here of a policy we have, and a real life case of an application going up to 80% utilization, and we were notified. There's a whole bunch of other stuff here, but I'll let you guys look at this in the deck, stuff about how you manage the shapes and change that. There's a whole other platform features, whether that's Oracle Database Cloud Service, which we're talking about for autonomous Linux and autonomous database, which is keeping you patched automatically. You have Oracle Digital Assistant, load balancing, all these things. PeopleSoft and OCI is moving you towards autonomous management of your application. It's really saving you cost, saving you money, and really keeping you secure. A whole bunch of stuff around cost management, which I'm going to skip, and you can see that, and I'll get to the point where you can have our contact information. Please reach out to me if you'd like to understand any of this stuff. I'm happy to jump back on a quick Teams meeting, a Zoom call with you, and walk you through all this stuff. Cloud Advisor, Cloud Guard, all those features that you get on OCI, you don't get them anywhere else. And specifically for your PeopleSoft on OCI experience. All right, I slammed through those final stages. Please type in any questions that you have. I think there's a way for me to unmute people if you have any questions that you want to ask live. Our information is right there online on the slide. Please reach out to us if you want demos of this stuff, you want to talk through the use case, you want to talk about your specific situation, your organization, and how where you're at in the journey and where you'd like to go. Maybe you're already on OCI and you want to talk about, hey, we're on OCI, we're struggling to keep up with on the personnel side. How do we leverage you for services on OCI? We can do that. Maybe you're on a non-OCI, maybe you're on AWS or Azure, and you want to talk about services. We can support you. We can either help you out on those other cloud infrastructures, or we can help you talk about a lift and shift to OCI if you want to do that. So really, we come alongside you, help you achieve your goals. Any questions, feel free to put them in, and I will give it another minute or two to see if there's anybody has any questions.
Yeah. So Cameron, I wanted to add while we wait for questions. So back to children's. I mean, I think that was doing the Oracle Cloud Manager, I think, was one of the big selling points for them to do OCI, because then they were able to, as you described it, kind of manage everything from one place. So that was definitely a big selling point for them. to going on OCI. So I just wanted to kind of highlight it there. But at this point, we don't have any questions. So I think we're...
Sounds good. Well, you see our contact information there. Feel free to reach out, get the deck, reach out if you want any conversation. Simply just say, can we just tell you a little bit about what we're doing here at this organization? I'm happy to jump on a call with you and just discuss. We're also we can also help you connect the dots with Oracle, something I call ourselves the Oracle Whisperer. If you're not clear on who your reps are with Oracle and you want to understand a little bit better, I'm always happy to help you understand and navigate that complex situation in terms of your reps at Oracle. I can help you with that too. Thanks everybody. Hope you have a great day.
Right.
Hope you see some great sessions today, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.